1st of April 2025, we explore a little further on what happened some few days back in Edo State. At Uromi, it was a beehive of activities, not the kind of activity that you see that everyone is excited about, but the one that you see that everyone be worried about. It will go on to become a matter of threats to a certain ethnic group in the north. Governors are running helter-skelter. As about now, the last check, the governor of Edo State is in Kano State, meeting up with the families of the deceased, those who were mobbed in Uromi a few days back. We'll explore specifically the human rights angle of that, and in fact also the security perspectives in that regard. We have with us live in the studio Larry Oguego, who is a human rights advocate. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure and my privilege. It's good to be here again.
So, the story has been that these persons were mobbed because they were seen with guns with them, and instead of reporting to the higher authority, they went on to, kill them. And it's quite shocking. I mean, it's not new in the Nigerian system, but it's new for Edo State. But I'm just wondering, how did you receive that news, and what are the possible human rights violations to some of these issues?
First of all, I must be sincere. I was shocked, I was sad, but I wasn't really particularly surprised that such a thing should happen anywhere in Nigeria, not only in Edo State. This is also a good opportunity to commiserate with the families of the deceased. It's a sign of how cheap life has become in Nigeria. These were Nigerians traveling from Port Harcourt to Kano just to celebrate the holiday. And they were not thinking, no matter how they stretched their imagination, that they were not going to survive that journey. And it's not as if they had an accident. It was just that Nigeria, literally speaking, happened to them. And it's a symptom of what has become normal in Nigeria. Life is very cheap in Nigeria. Very, very cheap. Not just cheap, very cheap. This is one of the few countries in the world where we have institutionalized mob action and mob justice. I'll get to that. But when you talk about the human rights angles, there are two clear provisions of the Nigerian Constitution that the mob breached.
Okay.
The first one is the right to life. Nobody or group of persons actually should take life of another person in Nigeria without a court of competent jurisdiction giving permission that their life should be taken. There are circumstances under which a person can be killed, and that is if a court says this person should die for committing an offense with capital punishment. But we live in a country where people gather, and in the heat of the moment, they take a decision to try a suspect and execute the person instantly. The Edo incident is not the first. The first picture that came to my mind when I heard the story was the Alu 4. I literally wept when I saw the video of the Alu 4. Young people who were sent to the university to study, they just ended up as ashes on the streets for doing nothing wrong. But the truth is that even if they did something wrong, in a nation where things work properly, they should have been presented to the law for the law to decide what happens to them. The second aspect of human rights that actually led to the first being violated, that is the first I mentioned, being the right to life. The second is the right to fair hearing, which we don't take seriously as a people, really. From the family all the way to institutions, to workplaces, and even to our policing institutions. The right to fair hearing means that you should allow every party to state their case. If they actually gave these men the opportunity to explain clearly and fully where they were traveling to, why they were in possession of the weapons. Look at my dogs, I'm a hunter, I've not kidnapped anybody before. If you doubt me, take me to the police station. If they gave them time to explain, this wouldn't have happened. And that is why when I hear stories like this, and we get into our usual frenzy of reactions, people talking about this dastardly act will not go unpunished, the usual things we hear, security agents running up and down, doing the usual show for proper optics. So you see governor marching down the road with security agents flanking him. You see police making statements. The case will be transferred to Abuja. You see CDS weighing in on a matter that is exclusively a police case. Everybody wants to shine with the disaster. But let me tell you something, and I say it with all sense of responsibility. In the next few weeks, nobody will remember this again.
Absolutely.
And I will say something that a lot of people will not like, but I will still say it because I have a duty to say it, to remind us that we are not dealing with the problem, we are dealing with the symptoms. This will happen again. Not to indigents of Kano necessarily, not to any particular person, but as long as we encourage people to disregard the law in Nigeria, as long as our leaders do not have respect for the rule of law, as long as we do not mainstream human rights as a national conversation and practice, this will happen repeatedly. Repeatedly. Amnesty International documented that in a little above 10 years, Nigeria lost 555 persons or thereabout to mob action.
Right.
And you begin to ask yourself, what kind of nation is it that people will just wake up on a good day because of an allegation or even a suspicion, not an allegation? A person gets killed instantly. Very often, mob action happens in the presence of people who are supposedly responsible. I've witnessed some mob action as a child. I had the misfortune of being at Onitsha when they did what they called Boys Oye. I was in secondary school. I saw men killed for nothing. I saw men protesting their innocence vehemently and they were cut down in their prime. I saw a particular man. It was after that I decided I wasn't going to watch again. The man was not only protesting, he was saying clearly that this person who is accusing me had issues with me. He was loud and making a case. The same person he was saying that had issues with him hit him with a rod on his head. He passed out and they killed him and they burnt him. After that, I was in secondary school. I just went back, cried, and decided I won't step out of the school anymore. I won't even go to the fence. I won't watch again. I had this feeling in my spirit that that man didn't do anything. That this other person, who was one of the leaders of the mob, saw an enemy or a perceived enemy and used that opportunity to deal with him summarily. And that's one thing that is very bad about this mob action. But we have a disposition to tolerate human rights abuse, to tolerate the things that lead to mob action. The police and other security agencies do not work. They actually also engage in extrajudicial killing, which is a form of mob action. As a matter of fact, I will just have to say this the way it is. Our policemen on several occasions treat us like a mob. That when you see police descend on a Nigerian and beat the person, it is just very often the grace of God that saves our lives in the hands of the people who are supposed to actually protect us. So we have a culture of mobbing people at every level. I don't want to digress and talk about the political mobbing that is going on Natasha Akpoti present. We have different kinds of mob action, but that is a distraction. Just descend on one person and beat the person to death. We are discussing physical mob action now, but there's political mob action. There are different kinds of mob action. And we have actually assented to mob action as a nation. But when it happens in this shocking manner, We are running up and down to pretend that we're interested in solving the problem. It's pretense because our political leaders are not interested. Why do I say so? For us to stop things like mob action from continuing in Nigeria, we must do at least two things. One is that we must promote and respect the rule of law as a people, from citizen to president. We must not tolerate any action that flies in the face of the law and then we pretend that it really doesn't matter, that if you have the power to do it, you can do it. We must respect the laws of this nation. The second thing we must do is that we should mainstream human rights, not only conversation, but respect for human rights. We cannot run policing institutions that flog people and beat them on the streets and do all sorts of illegal things, and then we expect that the citizens will behave properly. We cannot have politicians who hire thugs and pay them money to disrupt elections and sometimes beat people, sometimes also to death. And these are the people who are supposed to be our role models, they are the leaders of the nation. We can't have such leaders. And then we're running around pretending that what happened in Edo is a surprise to any of us. We don't like those things. Personally, I know that every life is sacred and we shouldn't waste life. But I'm not impressed with all these optics, all this running around and pretending that we want to solve the problem. If we want to solve the problem, we should know what to do. I salute Oguego for going to Kano. I salute the Kano State governor for receiving him. The reason I'm interested in those actions is because those actions are supposed to douse reprisals. Because we live in a nation where we are so polarized that if this is not properly managed, it will lead to other challenges. But if we want to stop this kind of thing from happening, we should go to the roots. It's not an ethnic matter, really. Some people have started painting it with some ethnic coloration. It's not, because the last time I checked, most victims of mob action in the middle belt, in the Midwest, in the Southeast, in anywhere in Nigeria, in the Southwest, are actually people who live in that environment, who are from that place. In fact, the highest number of victims of mob action in the Southeast are Igbos, who live in the Southeast. Many of them are victims of people who actually know them. Some of these people who kill them know their face, they know that this is one of us, but because you stole this thing, we are going to kill you. We don't want a thief in our midst. And you know, my pain is that most of the people who dispense mob action are also thieves. If you want to look at the technical meaning of stealing, when you take something that doesn't belong to you without the permission of the owner and you convert it to personal use. Most of the people who perpetrate mob justice actually are thieves. But because they don't understand that they don't have the right, nor the power, nor the moral justification to do what they do it. And because there are also no consequences, they do these things and get away with it. So if we want to really solve our problems, I think we should do better. Running up and down and making the right noise won't cut it. These things will bound to continue, they are bound to continue happening until we sit down and decide to run a nation the way nations are run, by first of all respecting the Constitution, which is actually a document that prescribes how the nation should be run. We're not respecting it presently, and that's why we have all these problems.
Some of the stories, some of the accounts that has been online is that how that happened, just like you mentioned, that there would have been some explanation as to why they are having guns. That if those explanations were done right, we're not sure would have gotten to that point of them killing them, and upon the fact of even burning them. One of the accounts that I read was that in the process of asking them questions, one of them brought out dagger, and they wanted to fight, and it entered into some chaos, and then it got into breakdown of law and order. But I'm just thinking to myself, in the head and in the mind of those who perpetrated that evil, just before I even come to that, there was also another account of the fact that the community where this happened also had issues with farmers' headers clash. Farmers have been screaming and crying about the fact that they have been raped, they have been chased, they have been killed from their farms, reminiscent of what we are seeing in Hamufu in Enugu State. And there's the government of the day, in Edo State at least, didn't do anything about it, has not done anything about it. And so this one, I don't know to what extent that they mistook these people who were passing through Port Harcourt or passing through Edo State from Rivers through to Kano, that they now mistook them to become those Hausa men or Fulani men who have been chasing them in the farms. So, you know, again, it boils down to miscommunication. But then again, I want to also move to the inactivity of either the security agencies or the government in things like this. I mean, I believe that if there was something like an arrest that had been made regarding these things, I mean, we would have had some issues where at least the people would have listened to these people and say, look, they are not kidnappers, they're not armed robbers, they're just hunters who are going to celebrate Salah in Kano.
You raised two clear issues. The first issue is the fact that government appears to be indifferent to the farmer-herder clashes and sometimes damage of crops by livestock and all of that. Because when we say farmer-herder clashes, we should also acknowledge that sometimes crops just walk into farms and practically eat up somebody's investments. And that is not good enough. And I've noticed a pattern that politicians in the southern part of Nigeria appear to be afraid to tackle issues related to this infringement. And that is wrong. But having said that, you raised the second issue about the fact that the inability of the government to protect the people apparently made them feel that, oh, we'll protect ourselves. So if we suspect a person is one of those that makes it impossible for us to engage in our legitimate farming enterprise, then we should take care of the person ourselves, since the government is incapable of doing so. Then you raise the third issue, I must add, the fact that one of them allegedly brought out a dagger, which apparently maybe incensed or angered the mob. But the truth is that all of these things speak to a failed state. In a normal nation, it is the duty of the government to enforce the law. And nobody should be above the law. Nobody should be seen as a privileged citizen. Your cow cannot eat my corn or my cassava. It shouldn't happen anywhere. And on the other hand, I should not in any way do things that will threaten the welfare of your cow or your cattle. But in Nigeria, some people from certain ethnic groups are seen as sacred. They are seen as untouchables. So they can feed their livestock with your hard work in your farm. And our political leaders in the southeast and elsewhere look away to preserve their political career. Plain truth. And people are incensed because of these things. But let me also point out something that we don't think about. There's something you call rationalization, justification. When things go bad, you look for reasons to justify your actions. There is no reason nor basis for action. If 50 men surround 20 men and 15 of them bring out daggers, if you can overpower them to the extent that you were able to burn them, it means you could have also submitted them to the law. There is absolutely no justification. You see, one of the things I try to explain to my staff and any other person who is under my influence is that when you make a mistake, don't rationalize. Don't look for excuses. Accept you made a mistake. That's the beginning of the journey to correction. Once you begin to rationalize, you manufacture reasons to justify your stupidity. And then you become more stupid. So I don't want to engage in any justification whatsoever, no matter how you stretch your imagination. If an armed robber is arrested actually robbing a bus or a home, the law prescribes that you arrest the robber if you can and take him to the police. What are the justifications for not taking him to the police? Oh, if we take him to the police, they will take bribe and release him, and they'll come and rob us again.
No, but what is the place? What is the place of self-defense? If you say if someone robs a home,
I was going to get to that.
Okay.
I was going to get to that because I've had this conversation with the former PPRO of Enugu State some time ago. I remember on the different Cosmo FM, and he said, "Oh, so when we say an armed robber robbing, so if I said no, the law provides for all kinds of situations. That's the beauty of the law. If an armed robber is in the course of actually robbing someone, and a police officer appears on the scene, and the robber drops his gun on the ground and surrenders, if you shoot him at that point, it's murder. But he was just going to kill someone. He had even probably killed another person, and the corpse is there. By law, you murdered him, it's a extrajudicial killing. Because at the time he raised his hand, he's not a threat to you. That's the law. Emotionally, we don't agree. We are like, but he has already killed somebody, we should kill him too. Hey, if we actually run Nigeria like that, nobody will be alive. And that's where we are going already. It's a case of an eye for an eye, and everybody becomes blind. At some point, somebody has to stop and say, what does the law say? But let us look at another scenario. This armed robber is operating, and the police appear on the scene, and they shoot into the air. They give indications that the law is here, and the armed robber is going ahead to endanger people's lives. The policeman has the backing of the law to shoot to kill, not to maim. Because it's not an active combat. You know I'm here. I'm trying to stop in the name of the law. But you are trying to take lives illegally. I can shoot to kill. Read my lips, not shoot to maim. If you are a sharpshooter and you can shoot to maim, fine. But you have seen it globally. This one is not a matter of global best practices. Global best practice is that if a person is stubborn, like a kidnapper, and he puts a gun to the head of a victim, they aim for the brain so that the death will be instant, so you can't pull the trigger. That is also the law. And that is why we need to employ intelligence security agents who are not moved by emotions, who can use discretions properly, not people who, when they shoot the leg, they shoot the brain, and people who, when they shouldn't shoot at all, they shoot. So the law has made provisions for every circumstance. But let me say this and emphasize it. Because the average Nigerian does not even understand that we have laws that should be respected. And we don't have knowledge of the law. You see, understanding is when you have knowledge and you don't understand. Most Nigerians don't have knowledge of the law. And because we don't have knowledge of the law, we create our own laws. So communities create their own laws. It is only in Nigeria that a group of persons will just go to a tailor, design a uniform, sew the uniform, go and stand on a federal highway. That's they create that without any permission, without any training, without anybody knowing who they are. As long as you have money to buy something that looks like khaki, you sew uniform, you give yourself the rank you want to give yourself. Then you go and stand by the road and block the road. That is how we got it. And we call them vigilante. The last time I checked, a vigilante group is supposed to stay within the confines of the community and provide security for the community, within the community. So when a bad guy comes into the community, they whisper to themselves, who is this person? Where does he live? Landlord, do you know him? What does he do for a living? And if they don't like the person's body language and the person's movement, they inform the police. And if the person maybe gets violent or commits crime, they arrest the person and hand over the police. If you go and look at the neighborhood watch law of Enugu State and the Anambra State Vigilante law, and most of these laws, they actually do not have powers beyond the powers we have as individuals. For instance, a vigilante operative, a neighborhood watch operative, does not have the power to go into a person's house for a search like the police. But he has the power to pursue a fleeing criminal into a compound because the aim is to catch the criminal. He does not have the power to detain or maintain a detention facility. He can only arrest and move to a police station. Incidentally, we have what we call citizen arrest. If you can overpower a criminal, you or me, we can also arrest the person and take to the police. But because Nigerians are not knowledgeable about the law and about human rights, we create our own laws. We say we are protecting ourselves, and in the course of protecting ourselves, we remove the protection of other persons.
Okay, I was actually thinking that if a criminal attacks you in your home, it's assumed he's coming to kill.
Not necessarily. I will explain that too. I think it's good that we explain this, and that is why let me say that's why institutions like this should give people like us time to explain these things. Because we don't just use news. You know, when it's news, we talk about it. I think we need to teach people some of these lessons intentionally, so they will learn. You see, if a person comes to your house, for instance, as a thief, and you kill the person, you can be charged for manslaughter or murder depending on the circumstances. I will tell you why. I said as a thief. There's a difference between a thief and an armed robber.
Ah,
Yes.
really?
Yes, I
How
can
differentiate
scale
between
your
your
fence and come into your compound to pick scrap or to steal your clothing on the line. I'm not an armed robber. I'm not armed. If you shoot me, you are the criminal. You use unreasonable force to restrain me. The fact that I trespass into your property doesn't mean you should shoot me. If a young man jumps your fence unarmed, and three able-bodied young men come out and beat him to death and say he's a thief, actually he has stolen something already and he's going to jump the fence again, and you catch him and beat him to death. If I'm a police officer, I'll charge you for murder. And I'm not charging for murder out of anger or emotion, because three of you already overpowered him before killing him. So what you should have done would have been to take him to the police, not to kill him. He's a thief. Yes, we know he's a thief. The law has already prescribed how a thief should be treated. And you that decided to treat him yourself, you became police, you became the court, you became the executioner, you became the prison. You actually deserve to be punished by the law. All of these things happen because we are ignorant of the law and we don't respect the law. And I say these things with all sense of responsibility. You cannot use a force that is disproportionate and unreasonable. Now, we look at the other scenario. If an armed robber comes into your house shooting like Rambo, like a cowboy, and the only way you can restrain him is to also shoot at him to stop him, that is different. You are using commensurate force. That is the principle here. Commensurate force. So if you have a young boy who came into your house, even with a cudgel or a baton or a 2x2 piece of wood, and you have four of you there, and you treat him in a way that will either kill him or maim him, he can actually go to court. And some judges may hold that if four of you were able to subdue him, to maim him, then you did something wrong to him. When you subdue him, you take him to the law. The problem we have is that we do not recognize the place of the law in Nigeria. We don't just understand it. You see, what I'm saying sounds strange.
It is.
And a lot of people will think I'm crazy or something. But I've also pointed out that these are principle-driven statements I'm making. For instance, I cited the principle of commensurate force. So you cannot use a force that is disproportionate. That is what we complain about when we discuss policing in Nigeria. So you are talking with a Nigerian policeman. The next thing, something explodes on your face, was a slap. The next thing, 3 persons are beating one young man for nothing. And I ask questions like, why are you beating him? And they say, oh, we wanted to arrest him. He started, no, now if he's resisting arrest and you can beat him this much, it means you can also just hold him and put him in the vehicle. You don't have to beat him. So it's a mindset we have. We behave like animals with all due respect. Even animals behave better sometimes. We need to understand that we are human beings. Let me tell us the truth. Even if there are no laws written down in the Constitution, humanity and morality actually imposes the same standards on us, that we should treat human beings like human beings. Unfortunately, we don't. And sorry, but I like the questions you're asking, because they are the same questions the man on the street will ask, what is this guy talking about? It's because he has not seen armed robbers before. It's because they have not come to his house. But that's not the issue. It's a mindset problem and a worldview problem. When your mind sets in a certain way, it's called mindset. When concrete sets, it's difficult to change. So when a person's mind is set that in every situation in this country called Nigeria, that your own is to shoot yourself or fight your way out of the situation, anyhow you do it, that whoever becomes a victim or whatever collateral damage occurs in the process is just part of life. But let me tell us the truth. It doesn't work that way. A rich man get away with it because this is Nigeria. A politician may get away with it. But you, as a regular Nigerian, if you do these things, sometimes the law will remember you. A lot of Nigerians have been engaging in mob action. These young people in Edo State also engage in the same mob action. More than 90%, even 98% in my own estimate of people who perpetrate mob action go free. But these other guys, let me tell you the truth. I would even want to use this opportunity to plead, recommend, not just plead, that we shouldn't commit the same offense they committed. Because I'm suspecting that those young people may not get fair hearing too, because there is already media trial. There's already a lot of anger. Some people may want to sacrifice them to pacify those who are upset that they killed people. They deserve fair hearing. Let me tell you why. Some of them may not have been involved. Some of the people arrested may not have been involved in the mob action. So you have to treat them on a case-by-case, person-by-person basis. We have to move our emotions to one side and do proper policing and investigation here. Because we'll be surprised that while trying to pacify those who are angry that their brothers were killed, we may actually commit another crime by just punishing people who didn't do anything. People who may have been passing in the environment and maybe one camera caught them. And they just, we have to arrest somebody, so arrest this one too. And if the person is not able to prove his innocence, and he may not have somebody to speak for him, he may just go in for it. So I'm also using this opportunity to encourage the police and any other institution that is interested in this investigation to isolate all of the individuals and do the same thing that I recommended that they should have done in Edo State, fair hearing. Interview them, verify their claims, investigate, use every tool available to you to confirm that this person was actually involved in the mob action before you prefer your charges. Don't say, let them go to court first. When they get to court, let them now convince the court whether they were part of it or not, which is part of, unfortunately, our policing mentality. That is wrong. We should learn to investigate cases. And if a person is not found culpable of any crime, the person is not even a suspect, we should actually apologize to the person, pay compensation, and ask the person to go. Because when you detain a person for 1 month, 2 months, that you're conducting investigations and finally the person is innocent, you can't just tell the person that you are fortunate to go. No, that's Nigeria for you. You don't do that, but that's what we do in Nigeria. So I think we also need to ensure that we don't make the mistake they made in Edo by using media trial and public outcry to convict people who may not have been part of the mob.
Right. I want to bring your attention to something that happened. I think it was recently. Supreme Court actually gave a judgment about a particular case. Sunday Jackson, a certain Sunday Jackson in Adamawa State, a headsman attacked him in his farm. He overpowered that headman and eventually killed him. What I mean by attack, he attacked him with daggers with intention to kill him. Supreme Court gave judgment. I mean, it has been going on for a long time, in fact, since 2016 or so. Well, Supreme Court gave a judgment recently, and the Supreme Court sentenced the person who overpowered the attacker to death by hanging, because the Supreme Court held that at that point he overpowered him, he would have, taken him to the police station. But I'm of opinion that this man attacked you with dagger, and when they attack you in the farm, they attack you to kill you. Of course, you know how this thing goes. We've heard these stories over and over again, how they attack people in farms and people abandon their farms, and because sometimes if you are even lucky, escape, but if you're not, you are killed. So the Supreme Court is saying that at the point where he was able to overpower him, he would have either run away or reported or taken him to the police station. But it's quite confusing because it was more like a self-defense at that point.
It's not confusing. I like the fact that you said he overpowered him. Now, if he actually overpowered him, apparently disarmed him, he wasn't a threat to him anymore. Moving forward from that point, if you stab him and kill him, you actually killed him. Very emotional topic. Now, why is it emotional? Because there is an underlying anger about herdsman-farmer crisis. So sometimes we actually replace the law with vengeance, the tendency to revenge. He wanted to kill me, so, since I have the opportunity, let me kill him in return. The law doesn't think like that. And human beings shouldn't think like that, really.
Can you explain to us the concept of self-defense?
The concept of self-defense
between two persons fighting.
Yes, the concept of self-defense is that if you are under threat and you have tools with which to defend yourself that is commensurate with the tools and the force the other party is using, You are protected by law. But you see, this is like a very delicate matter. And I hope those who will analyze my statement will not be emotional about it. But if they choose to be, I wish them luck. One day they will grow up. Now let me explain this again. Assuming somebody, I will tell you my own perspective, my understanding, which I know to be right. I don't believe, I know to be right. If somebody attacks me with a knife, with a dagger, and I overpower the person, overpower means he's now at my mercy. Remember I said if an armed robber in the course of attack sights policemen and he surrenders, at the time you overpower the person, though you are the person who overpowered him, he's at your mercy. He's not a threat to you anymore. That's the underlying principle.
Even after he has stabbed you?
That he stabbed you. You still had enough energy to overpower him. At that point, you overpowered him.
Wow.
The equation has changed. Understand my point. You see, the human,
no, I understand you.
Yes, the human aspect of us that doesn't understand the law. We get angry and say, but he wanted to kill me. But how do you know he wanted to kill you? Let me tell you this. I think I need to even explore that. The fact that I stabbed you doesn't mean I wanted to kill you. I can stab you in the heat of anger. Yes, a lot of people actually do things out of sheer provocation and anger. The person didn't mean to kill you. There are some people who are trained traditionally to fight with weapons. I hope you know that. If you go to the northern part of the country, for instance, they do dambe, they do boxing, wrestling. They have traditional weapons. You know, some of us don't situate our arguments in a holistic manner. The last time I checked, you don't see an Igbo man carrying a dagger around. Now, when an Igbo man sights a Fulani man or Hausa man with a dagger, he feels offended. But if you go to the north, even sometimes in the south, they hawk the dagger. It's part of their traditional lifestyle. If you go to India, you have people you call the Sikhs, S-I-K-H. If you are an adult male as a Sikh, you carry a dagger on your waist. As a matter of fact, there was a professor in the US that they had to ban from carrying the dagger. Professor in the United States, he would dress with a suit, tie his turban, and put a dagger on his waist. So sometimes you need to ask yourself, where is this person coming from? If as a young boy, your tradition trains you to fight with wrestling, you fight with wrestling. If you go to a place like Kenya, the Maasais fight with sticks. So if you want to fight with a Maasai and bring out your dagger, what does he do? He brings out a long stick. That is his weapon. David, we were told, fought with catapult. These young men from the north are taught to fight with dagger. So people sit down in their homes and craft beautiful daggers. Sometimes it's not even just for fighting. It's a sign of who they are. So the fact that I stabbed you doesn't mean necessarily that I want to kill you. I may stab you in the heat of emotion. And you assumed in your head that I want to kill you. That's how, see, listen to this. The law says when they are profiling a charge against the suspect, they say that Okeke Okoli went into Okafor's house with intent to commit felony, to wit, stealing. That is the intent aspect. So you can engage in an action with an intent that may not be the intent that the victim of that action assumed. I'm not making a case for the person who attacked a farmer. So I don't want to be misunderstood. We are just discussing principles. If somebody attacks me and I get to that point where I know that I've overpowered him, if I kill him at that point, I've sentenced him to death. It's difficult for us to reason like that because our imagination has been stretched, our patience has been stretched. We are in a perpetual conflict with an imaginary, sometimes real enemy. For those who have not encountered some of these enemies, they are imaginary. For those who have encountered them, they are real. So when you now see this enemy, and you don't even know the principles, when we talk about law, there are principles. You don't even know. It is your instincts that guide you. Your instinct is that he wanted to kill me. Now that I have the power, let me kill him so that I'll be safe. You don't even reason it out about so that or no so that. we are in a fight. He wanted to kill me. I just succeeded in overpowering him, so I should kill him. But that's not what you should do. Surprisingly, even our religion doesn't recommend that. He says you should love your enemies, and you don't kill people you love. If a man tries to kill you and you overpower him, he's the enemy, right? Even the Bible doesn't recommend that you kill him. The Bible recommends that you show him some love, at least spare his life and give him to the police. I'm now trying to take it outside the realm of the law to help us understand. But let me also state clearly that if, in my opinion, that the herdsman was killed in the course of the struggle, for me, the expression that changes the equation is overpowered. Assuming he stabbed me and I evaded the stab, he stabbed me again and that one entered and I'm struggling with it and I stabbed him, it means we are engaged in combat. At that point, you can't say that I committed a crime. But assuming I somehow overpower him, possibly disarm him, and he's at my mercy, and I stab him to death, it means I killed him. Tough luck for those who don't understand it. But you see, one of the things I also said is, the energy we are using to make noise about this thing. If I have the privilege of sitting one-on-one with Oguego and all the governors, including the governor of Kano State, I will tell them this is a time to prioritize real civic education. This is a time to rise above all this running around and political talk and engage in civic education. Let's talk about Akaloka. Let's talk about Deborah. Let's talk about these people. Let's ask why. It's not just these persons that were killed. I mean, people have been killed. There are new four. Let's talk about the cost of human rights abuse. Let's talk about the fact that one of the boys that was killed in Port Harcourt was the only son of the mother. And the mother can't have children anymore. You know what that does to a person from southern part of Nigeria? The man practically lost his mind. Let's begin to educate people on why we should consider life sacred. We can't give life. We can't manufacture life. We shouldn't take life at the drop of a pin. We should actually intentionally protect life. And some people do that. Sometimes when you have riots, even in northern Nigeria, people have been known to protect possible victims at the risk of their own lives because they value life. They don't understand why my neighbor should be killed. And they hide them. And they were announcing that if we catch you, but they will still try. Why? Because they value life. So this is the time to begin to ask ourselves the real question. Why do we take life so easily in Nigeria? When I say we, I don't mean mob. I mean police. Bolanle died for no reason. The police actually execute people without trial in Nigeria. No, I'm not saying allegedly. It is a fact. Policemen have been tried and convicted for killing people, including the person that killed the lawyer on Christmas Day, for nothing. One was also convicted in Port Harcourt. As a matter of fact, the two boys, he made them lie down and shot at one of them. The other one fled. It was like serious, like seriously. The boy died, and the policeman was convicted. So we live in a nation where, we don't consider life as anything. When we get to that point where a policeman executes a citizen, we execute him in public. After due process. Let me also use the opportunity to point out something that we don't think about. Why do we kill people when they commit certain crimes? We say they deserve death. But sorry, in most situations where we them because we think they deserve to die, the law has already prescribed death. The only difference is that you are not patient and you don't trust the system. If an armed robber commits the crime of robbery, even without killing anybody, the law prescribes death sentence. So the only reason you decided to kill yourself is because, one, you are impotent. You don't want the law to kill the person, so you want to kill the person yourself immediately. And then two, you don't trust the law to kill the person. That you go and give bribe to the police, and then the person will be released. And this is also an opportunity to speak to another point. Very often we arrest suspects. We take them to the police, and we walk away. I want to use this platform to remind us that the police cannot successfully prosecute the person without witnesses. let me talk to my brothers in the southeast. We are too busy to actually transform our environment. A typical Igbo man will tell you, police. I won't leave my business and be going to police station. If you don't go to police station, I'm talking to, if you don't go to police station, who will give the police the evidence with which to convict the criminal? A human being has to give the police the evidence. A human being will have to come to court to testify. Now, when we don't do these things, we are actually inducing the family to find a loophole by bribing the police, and then the police will naturally leave the person. Not that it's the right thing to do. The police would also call the people and say, you brought a suspect here, come and give us evidence. The reason I'm explaining these things is that there are so many lessons to be learned from this. The fact that you took a suspect to the police station doesn't mean that the suspect will automatically go to jail. For the person to go to jail, there is need to take the person to court, and the evidence will be profiled, and the magistrate or judge will find the person guilty. And if all of the people who witnessed the incident abscond, so how is the police going to get control? So there are so many things to speak to, way too many. And what it means is that our political elite should begin to create a society that is sane. Step number one, there should be civic education. People should know about the law of the land, the supremacy of the Constitution. The Constitution is supposed to be supreme, but it is not. We need to know about the rights provided explicitly for us in the Constitution. People don't know. Now, when we actually make this kind of knowledge pervasive, when people get to know, everybody gets to know, then we begin to do enforcement. What will happen is that after some time, we won't be hearing about mob action anymore. But unfortunately, we are not interested in that. Why are the politicians not interested? Because they encourage disrespect for the laws of the land, so that they can live large, so that they can loot the treasury, so that they can rig elections, so that they can do anything they want to do and get away with it, including sending mobs to also kill people. We know political opponents have been killed in different parts of Nigeria in mysterious circumstances. Sometimes in clear circumstances. I think it's in Kogi State that a woman leader was killed. So what happened? Our own Chief Justice and Attorney General was killed, right? In his house. And the government couldn't unravel it. How do you explain that? So if we want to stop these things, we shouldn't be playing to the gallery and saying, people from Kano State died in Edo State. The governor is going to pay condolence visit. It is good that the governor pays condolence visit. It is good that these issues are discussed at level, so that the families of the victims, that their people will know that it's not intentional and it's not driven by ethnic sentiments. I mean, those people also mob their brothers and sisters. But I think we need to rise above these visits. This is a good time for people to begin to talk about civic education. This is a good time for National Orientation Agency to stop showing us cartoons and start teaching us about national values. I don't know why anybody should spend millions showing us cartoons about water and power when we have more pressing national issues. This is a good time for Nigeria to wake up. You know, we miss our opportunities. Some of these things should trigger conversations. And that's why I'm actually trying to remind us that it's not just about ethnic coloration, it's not just about mob action, it's about the rule of law, about respect for human rights, and about civic education. If we don't get these things right, people will continue to die through mob action and through extrajudicial killing.
Right, we're almost out of time. Just to wrap things up, because again, this also has an ethnic correlation already. When the headlines came out, in fact, I already knew where this was going to head to when that happened, because the headlines were just reading 16 traveling northerners ambushed in Edo State. You just be hearing 16 northern this, northern that, and you know, when those kinds of headlines come up, as a northerner, what comes to mind is they have killed our people. Let's see what's going to happen. And then you go on some social media sites, you see some threats. Some people say, well, we're waiting for the Ramadan to be over, the Salah to be over, we're going to have a reprisal. Kano State governor has been warning. The Edo State governor, thank God, has visited the Edo State. There's a high-powered delegation going to Edo State to meet with the Hausa community. You know, how responsible should, you know, also journalists be in things like this?
You actually just took this right out of my mind. That I was going to tell you to also talk to your colleagues. Maybe bring them here and interview them. That headline was crafted by someone just to sell newspapers.
Absolutely.
You can say 16 travelers mobbed in Edo State. Same headline, more objective. Especially knowing the country you live in.
Yeah.
When you give it ethnic coloration deliberately to sell newspapers, the truth is that you that crafted that headline may be a victim of the reprisal if it happens. God forbid it won't happen, because I think they're putting a lot of effort. And talking about effort to douse the tension, I think it's appropriate to also compensate the families of those who were killed in the mob action. That's one practical way to show them that, oh, we are sorry. Apart from all the platitudes and good talk and everything, the governor should begin to say, can we identify them? We want to compensate their families. That means they are breadwinners. These are people's husbands, brothers, sons. So if you have children, I'll give them scholarship. Edo State government give them scholarship. And it shouldn't be about Edo State, which should be a principle. So if anybody is mobbed anywhere, the same principle kicks in, while we try to stop the mob action itself. But that ethnic coloration is not only mischievous, it is terrible. And we should do a lot of work to educate the people, especially those who are related to the victims, who suffered loss, to understand that nobody went out to the expressway, to the highway that day to kill their siblings. No. It was just a bad combination of circumstances that led to the death of their people. And we need to demonstrate it beyond talk. We need to show them that we are concerned about how the family of this guy is going to fare. When you begin to do certain practical things, they'll say, oh, that they are really concerned. Okay, we get it. And then this is a good point to start civic education and to continue it. The beauty of the law is that it can be discussed in any language, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Efik, Ibibio, Wari, whatever language. You can interpret the law, discuss it, and then make it clear to the people that anybody who breaches the law will face the consequences. Unfortunately, I've been going back to this, if you notice, I've done it repeatedly. But it's difficult for politicians to do that because they thrive in illegality. So it's very difficult for a politician whose main weapon for sustaining himself in power is illegality to begin to preach the rule of law and the human rights. Because once he becomes the preacher, sometimes even his boys will say, Oga, you want us to go and beat you? Oga, wow, you said there will be consequences and you want us to go and beat you again. What if there are consequences? So we live in a country where we must address the leadership problem. Yes, we must, because everything rises and falls on leadership, including mob action. Our leaders reason like mobs, behave like mobs. Sorry, I'm not saying this just to play to the gallery. We have leaders who don't really appreciate why we should deal with some of these problems. They are just more interested in political power. When we have leaders who are responsible, who are willing to protect citizens as individuals. Like what I mean is, if you are a father and you have 6 children, 5 children, you not only protect your family, you protect them as individuals. You may have a son who is a rascal. You give him extra attention. You want to see that he doesn't get into trouble. You know he's a rascal, but you still protect him. Now, when we have leaders who protect us like that, who understand that if you're a governor of a state, you are the father of the state. So even the boys who didn't go to school, who become armed robbers, they are your children. You have a duty to reform them. I said a duty. It's not something you gloss over. So if you are the president of Nigeria, you are the father of the nation. Forget the "na your mama" video. But you're actually the father of the nation. So it's your duty to see that all your children go to school, that all your children feed well. You see, my dad taught me that a responsible father cannot eat when the children have not eaten. We have leaders who sit on buffet tables and choose choice meals when their children go hungry in IDP camps. That is sacrilege. You see, I'm not digressing from the main conversation. The main conversation is, oh, we are worried about mob action. But the point is that it is the lawlessness in the society that even creates citizens who are not educated, who don't know about the law, who don't have a job. And because of all of this combination of factors, they go to stand on the highway. They gave themselves a job. We are vigilantes, and they went and stood there. They will give you for money, you travel. That's their job. They gave themselves the job. And in the course of that, they just killed some people. If we have leaders who are responsible and responsive, and those guys have jobs. I'm a product of the training I got from my parents and from my community. The things I know I didn't learn from the United States. I'm a Nigerian. I've lived in Nigeria all my life, and I'm speaking like this, and that is how I behave too. So that tells you that there are many other Nigerians who are properly raised to understand how communities will thrive. If we can extend that same privilege to every other person or to a critical mass of Nigerians, these things will be curtailed. Unfortunately, we still have a political class that will rather prey on our illiteracy, on our lack of knowledge, on our rascality, rather than rein us in. They actually encourage children not to go to school. They destroy the things that will make us a sane society, just so that they will enjoy the plunder. It's like war. You know, some people go to war just to subdue the enemy and create peace. Others go to war so that they can get loot from the war. Loot, they call it plunder. So we have some politicians who are interested in the loot. So it's like, okay, I don't care if they go to school or not. I don't care. While we're running around trying to discuss all these problems, I'll be helping myself to state funds. I'll be enjoying life. I'll be living large. I have bulletproof vehicles if there's no security. I have helicopters if the roads are not good. I'm not thinking of common good. When we are able to solve our problems in a holistic manner, all of these things will stop. I was telling somebody before he came into the studio that it is the same reason why Nigeria cannot play football properly, that we cannot take care of the health of our citizens, that we are discussing mob action, that we cannot conduct elections. We are lawless people. So we have to speak to that. We need to respect the rule of law, respect the rights of the people, create a disciplined population, and Nigeria will become one of the greatest nations on planet Earth.
It's a fine place to live it. Larry Oguego, many thanks. We truly, really appreciate you. It's always a delight speaking with you when it comes to issues regarding the national polity, human rights, and some of these issues. Many thanks.
It's a privilege. It's my pleasure, my privilege to speak on this esteemed platform. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.